My name is Ethan, and for the first 28 years of my life, things were normal. Maybe a little boring, but normal. I had a decent job as a software developer, a small apartment in Chicago, and I called my parents back in our hometown of Willow Creek every Sunday. My dad, Robert, was a retired accountant, a man of routine and quiet pride. My mom, Carol, was the more outgoing one, always involved in some community event or volunteering at the local library. Growing up, Dad wasn't the most expressive guy, but I always knew he cared. He taught me how to change a tire, how to invest, even if I mostly ignored that advice. And he never missed one of my baseball games, even when I was benched for half the season because my pitching arm was, let's just say, not my strong suit. Our Sunday calls were usually pretty predictable. How's work? How's the weather? Any news with your friends? The usual stuff. About 6 months ago, that routine got a major shakeup. Started with a phone call, not on a Sunday, but a Tuesday evening. My phone buzzed, and I saw Dad's name pop up. That was unusual. He almost never called during the week unless it was something important. "Hey, Dad, everything okay?" I asked, a little knot forming in my stomach. There was a pause on the other end, a heavy sigh that didn't sound like the usual Dad. "Ethan, we need to talk." His voice was low, serious. "Okay, about what?" I prompted, leaning back in my desk chair. It's about what you do." My eyebrows shot up. What I did. I was a software developer. It wasn't exactly a scandalous profession. My job? Is there something wrong? Maybe there were layoffs I didn't know about, even though I was pretty sure my company was doing well. "Your other job," he clarified. And that's when the knot in my stomach tightened into a full-blown panic. See, what my parents didn't know was that for the past couple of years, I had a side gig. It wasn't anything illegal, not exactly, but it was definitely something I knew they wouldn't approve of. To put it simply, I was a cam model. It started out as a way to make some extra cash to pay off my student loans faster. A friend from college had mentioned it, and honestly, the money seemed too good to pass up at the time. I created a profile on one of those websites, using a pseudonym, of course, and started doing shows a few nights a week after my regular job. It was surprisingly lucrative, and I managed to pay off my loans way ahead of schedule. But then it became a bit of a habit. I enjoyed the attention, the feeling of being desired. And the money was still a nice bonus. I knew it wasn't something I could do forever, and I always intended to stop eventually, but eventually kept getting pushed further down the line. "Dad, I don't know what you're talking about." I lied, my heart pounding in my chest. "Don't lie to me, Ethan," he said, his voice sharp, a tone I hadn't heard since I was a teenager, and he caught me sneaking out of the house. "I know." My mind raced. How could he possibly know? I was so careful. I used a different email address, a VPN, everything. Had someone recognized me? Had there been some kind of data breach? How did you find out?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was another long pause. "Your mother. She saw something." "My mom? How?" She barely knew how to use her email, let alone stumble upon my online activities. "She was looking at some news article on her tablet," Dad explained, his voice strained. "An ad popped up. She recognized you." "An ad? For my shows?" That was almost unbelievable. The chances of that happening had to be astronomical. I don't even know what to say," I stammered, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me. "Say you're going to stop," he said firmly. "Say you're going to stop this disgusting thing you're doing." Ouch. That stung. I knew they wouldn't be happy, but disgusting? "Dad, it's not like that." I tried to explain, but he cut me off. "Don't even try to justify it, Ethan. We raised you better than this. Your mother is devastated. She can't even look at you the same way." That hit me hard. My mom was my rock. The thought of her being ashamed of me, it was almost unbearable. I understand," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'll stop. I promise." "You better," he said, his tone still cold. "Because if you don't, well, then we're going to have a serious problem." "What kind of problem?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "The kind where we can't support you anymore, Ethan." The kind where you're on your own. He didn't have to spell it out. I knew what he meant. They still helped me out sometimes, especially with unexpected expenses. And the thought of being completely cut off, it was terrifying. I said I'd stop, Dad. I will. I hope so, he said, his voice softening slightly. For your sake, and for your mother's. The call ended shortly after that, leaving me feeling shaken and ashamed. I immediately deactivated my account on the website, deleting all my photos and videos. I felt a strange mix of relief and regret. Relief that the secret was out and I could finally stop, but regret that it had happened this way, that I had disappointed my parents so deeply. The following Sunday, I called home as usual, bracing myself for an awkward conversation. But to my surprise, Dad was almost back to his old self. He asked about work, the weather, even made a few of his usual dry jokes. Mom was a little quieter, but she still chatted with me, asking about my friends and if I was eating properly. It was like the Tuesday night call had never happened. I didn't bring it up, figuring they wanted to put it behind them as much as I did. But over the next few weeks, I started to notice a subtle shift in their behavior. They seemed distant. Our Sunday calls felt shorter, less frequent. Mom stopped asking about my friends. Dad's jokes were fewer and further between. Then, about a month after the phone call, Dad called me again on a Wednesday evening. This time, his voice was different. Not angry, not cold, but sad. Ethan, can you come home this weekend? He asked. Sure, Dad. Is everything okay? Your mother. She's been having a hard time. My heart sank. I knew it. They hadn't just forgotten about it. Mom was still hurting. Of course, I'll be there, I said immediately. I drove the 3 hours to Willow Creek on Friday night, the whole way filled with anxiety. I didn't know what to expect. Would Mom yell at me? Would Dad give me the silent treatment? When I arrived, the house felt heavy. The air was thick with unspoken words. Mom greeted me with a hug, but it wasn't the usual warm, comforting hug I was used to. It felt stiff, almost forced. Dad just nodded curtly. We had a quiet dinner, the kind where everyone avoids eye contact and stares intently at their plates. The conversation was stilted, filled with long pauses. After dinner, Mom said she was tired and went to bed early. Dad and I sat in the living room, the silence stretching between us like a taut wire. Finally, he cleared his throat. Ethan, he began, his voice low. Your mother and I have been talking. Here it comes, I thought, bracing myself. We're worried about you. Worried? I thought they were angry. I told you I stopped, Dad. I deactivated my account. I haven't done anything since. We know, son, he said, and I could see the sadness in his eyes. But that's not what we're worried about. Then what is it? I asked, confused. He hesitated for a moment, then looked me straight in the eye. We think this whole thing is a sign. A sign? What was he talking about? A sign of what? I prompted. A sign that you're not happy, Ethan. That you're lost. I scoffed. Dad, I'm fine. I have a good job, a nice apartment. But are you happy? He interrupted. Really happy? I thought about it for a moment. Was I truly happy? My job was okay, but it wasn't my passion. My apartment was just a place to sleep. My social life was lacking. I mean, I'm okay, I said, trying to sound convincing. He shook his head. No, you're not. We can see it. And this whole cam modeling thing, it just confirms it. It was just a way to make some extra money, I explained again, feeling defensive. Maybe it started that way, he conceded. But it became something else, didn't it? Something you felt you needed to do to feel something. His words hit a little too close to home. He wasn't entirely wrong. We just want what's best for you, Ethan, he continued, his voice softening. And we don't think living in Chicago, working this job that doesn't fulfill you, we don't think that's it. So what do you suggest? I asked, a hint of sarcasm in my voice. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. We want you to come home, Ethan. Come back to Willow Creek. We have your old room. You can take some time to figure things out. Maybe go back to school. Find something you're truly passionate about. Come home? Move back in with my parents? At 28 years old? The thought was almost laughable. Dad, I appreciate the offer, but I don't think that's the answer, I said gently. I'm an adult. I have my own life. But are you living it? He countered. Or are you just existing? He had a point, but moving back home felt like a step backward, a sign of failure. I need to figure things out on my own, Dad, I said. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not ready to move back home. He sighed, a look of disappointment washing over his face. Okay, son, but just think about it, okay? We're here for you, no matter what. I stayed for the rest of the weekend, the tension between us still palpable. Mom was quiet and withdrawn, and Dad kept giving me these long, searching looks. By the time I drove back to Chicago on Sunday evening, I felt more drained than when I had arrived. A few weeks later, I got another unexpected call from my dad. This time, his voice was tight with anger. Ethan, have you started doing that? That thing again? He demanded without even a hello. What? No, Dad. I told you I stopped, I said, my blood running cold. Then what's this? He asked, and I could hear the rustling of paper on the other end of the line. What's what? I asked, my anxiety levels rising. This letter, he said, his voice trembling with rage. From some lawyer. A lawyer? What kind of lawyer? Had someone from the website contacted them? He says you're suing us? Suing them? What in the world was he talking about? I hadn't contacted any lawyers. Dad, I have no idea what you're talking about, I said, my voice laced with confusion and a growing sense of dread. Don't play innocent with me, Ethan. This letter says you're claiming we owe you money. A lot of money. My mind was blank. This made no sense. Dad, I swear, I haven't sued you for anything, I insisted. Then who did? He roared. Who else would do something like this? There was a long, tense silence. Then, in a voice filled with hurt and betrayal, he said, We can't have you in our lives anymore, Ethan. My breath caught in my throat. What? Dad, please, you have to believe me. No, he said, his voice cold and final. I don't. Not anymore. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hand shaking, a single thought echoing in my mind. What just happened? I tried calling my dad back immediately, but the phone just rang and rang. Eventually, it went to voicemail. I left a message, my voice trembling, begging him to pick up, to listen to me. But he didn't. I tried my mom's number too, with the same result. I spent the rest of the night in a state of panic, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what had happened. Who would send a letter to my parents pretending to be my lawyer? And why would they claim I was suing them? It made absolutely no sense. The next morning, I was a mess. I hadn't slept, and my anxiety was through the roof. I decided I needed to take action. I started by calling every lawyer I knew, or rather, every lawyer my friends knew. No one had contacted my parents on my behalf. Then a thought struck me. Could it be related to the cam modeling? Had someone found out and was trying to blackmail me or my family? Seemed far-fetched, but at this point, I was grasping at straws. I spent hours searching online, trying to find any information about scams or legal issues related to that industry, but I came up empty. Desperate, I decided to drive back to Willow Creek. I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I needed to talk to my parents face-to-face, to convince them that I had nothing to do with this lawsuit. The drive felt like it took forever. Every mile seemed to amplify my anxiety. When I finally pulled up to their house, the lights were on, but the driveway was empty. My heart sank. Had they left? Were they trying to avoid me? I parked my car and walked up to the front door, my hand shaking as I rang the bell. After a few agonizing minutes, the door slowly creaked open. It was my mom. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked like she hadn't slept either. Ethan, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Mom, I didn't send that letter, I said immediately, my voice pleading. You have to believe me. She just stared at me, her expression a mixture of sadness and disbelief. Your father. He's gone to see Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson was their family lawyer, the same one who had handled their will and other legal matters for years. My stomach dropped. They were taking this seriously. Mom, please let me explain, I begged, stepping inside the house. She didn't say anything, just stood there, blocking my path. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the raw pain that my past actions had caused. Who would do this, Mom? Who would try to cause trouble between us like this? I asked, my voice cracking. She finally moved aside, letting me into the living room. The letter was lying on the coffee table, and I picked it up, my hands trembling as I read through it. It was from a law firm I'd never heard of, claiming that I was owed a significant amount of money from my parents for services rendered and financial contributions over the years. It was vague and ridiculous. I swear, Mom, I have no idea who sent this, I said, looking at her with desperation. Just then, the front door opened, and my dad walked in. His face was grim, his jaw tight. He looked at me with an anger I had never seen before. Get out, Ethan, he said, his voice cold and hard. I don't want you in this house. Dad, please, just listen to me, I pleaded. I didn't do this. Mr. Henderson thinks it's legitimate, he said, his voice shaking with fury. He says we need to take this seriously. But it's not me, I insisted. Why would I sue you? Maybe because you think we owe you something? He retorted, his eyes blazing. Maybe you think we haven't done enough for you? That's not true, I cried out, feeling a wave of despair wash over me. I would never do that to you. Then who did? He challenged. I didn't have an answer. I was completely lost. Robert, maybe we should just hear him out, Mom said softly, her voice barely audible. Dad glared at her, then back at me. Fine, you have 5 minutes, Ethan. Then I want you gone. I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. Dad, Mom, I know I messed up with the other thing. I'm sorry for that. I stopped, I promise. But this lawsuit, I have absolutely nothing to do with it. Someone is trying to cause trouble, to hurt us. Why would anyone do that? Dad asked, his voice still skeptical. I didn't know. I racked my brain, trying to think of anyone who would want to harm my family, but I couldn't come up with anyone. I don't know, Dad, I said, my voice filled with frustration. But you have to believe me. I would never do this to you. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, trying to find any hint of deception. The silence in the room was thick with tension. Suddenly, my mom gasped. Wait a minute, she said, her eyes widening. That law firm, I think I've seen that name before. Where? Dad and I asked in unison. She frowned, her brow furrowed in thought. It was in an email. A spam email, I think. It was offering some kind of debt collection service. Debt collection? That didn't make any sense. We didn't owe anyone any money, as far as I knew. Are you sure, Carol? Dad asked, looking at her doubtfully. I think so, she said, nodding slowly. It was a few weeks ago. I almost deleted it, but something about the name, it stuck with me. I felt a glimmer of hope. Could this be some kind of elaborate scam? Do you still have the email, Mom? I asked eagerly. She thought for a moment, then nodded. I think so. I usually don't delete things right away. She hurried over to her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she searched through her inbox. After a few minutes, she let out a small cry of triumph. Here it is, she exclaimed, turning the screen towards us. There it was, an email from a shady-looking law firm offering aggressive debt recovery solutions. The name of the firm matched the one on the letter. Dad and I exchanged a look of disbelief. Seemed too simple, too ridiculous. But why would they send a letter like this? Dad asked, still confused. Maybe it's a scare tactic, I suggested. Maybe they send these letters out randomly, hoping someone will panic and pay them. We looked at each other, the realization slowly dawning on us. We had almost let a stupid spam email tear our family apart. Dad let out a long sigh, the tension finally leaving his body. "Oh, Ethan," he said, his voice filled with remorse. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions." "It's okay, Dad," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. "I understand why you were upset." Mom came over and hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We were so worried," she sobbed. We thought you had changed." "I did change, Mom," I said, hugging her back. "I stopped. I promise." We spent the rest of the day talking, finally clearing the air. I explained everything about the cam modeling, why I did it, and why I stopped. They listened, their initial anger replaced with understanding and concern. Dad admitted that he had been worried about me for a while, that he felt like I wasn't truly happy in my life. He still thought I should consider moving back home, but he didn't push it as hard this time. By the time I left on Sunday evening, things felt different. The heavy cloud that had been hanging over our family had finally lifted. We had faced a crisis, a ridiculous one at that, but it had somehow brought us closer together. A few weeks later, I got another call from my dad. This time, his voice was light and cheerful. "Hey, son," he said. "Just wanted to let you know that your mother and I are thinking about taking a trip to Chicago next month. We thought we could visit you, maybe catch a Cubs game." I smiled. "I'd love that, Dad. I'll start looking for tickets." Life wasn't perfect. I still had my own issues to figure out, my own path to find. But I knew one thing for sure. My family would always be there for me, even if sometimes we stumbled along the way. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.